Welcome, everybody, to the Fanmouth Daily Fantasy Baseball Breakdown for Thursday, May 29th. I'm Joe Marsh, joined today by Dave Del Grande. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great today.
All right. Got 8 games on the evening slate. Some very good hitting matchups as far as I'm looking at it. Not great pitching matchups, but we'll go through all the positions using Fanmouth prices. We'll give you some rankings. We'll tell you who we like. We'll help you build your lineup a bit. Dave and I have a bit of a contest running tonight, so eager to see what he has to say as well, so I can get a little inside information. Like I mentioned, not a ton to love at pitching. There's a few different ways you can go. I think pretty much choosing between three as far as Vogelsong, Heron, and Dickey. I think I'm going to use Vogelsong. Um, he wasn't off to a great start to the season, his first 3 or 4 starts, but his last 6 starts, he's been completely different. He's given up 1 run or less in 5 of the last 6. He's facing St. Louis, who has been hitting well as of late, but like I said, it's not a great pitching night, so there are no outstanding matchups. I think he's a good matchup. And then I would probably pair him with Dan Heron, 2.39 ERA at home. Uh, Facing Cincinnati, who's absolutely cold offensively. They're hitting 231 with 75 runs scored in the month of May. Both of those are bottom 3 in the league. They're hitting 234 on the road. So their offense just hasn't been the same lately. So I like Heron as well. What are you thinking, Dave?
Well, first off, I agree with what you said there at the beginning. I think tonight is a great hitting night. It's going to be very difficult to pare down some of the big high-priced hitters tonight because there seems to be 7 or 8 of them minimum that you could put in the lineup. Tonight might be a night to go with low-price pitchers for 2 reasons. Number one is, like we've said, there's a lot of high-priced hitters you're going to want to get in the lineup. And secondly, there isn't really a standout, or definitely not 2 standouts among the high-priced pitchers. So that's going to be a strategy I consider. That said, I do consider Dickey a standout pitcher tonight. I think he's got easily the best matchup. He's pitching very well. Kansas City is playing as poorly as any team going. They just got swept at home by Houston. If you had a Houston pitcher going in that series, you got very good point totals. Now they go on the road to face a hot Toronto team, a hot pitcher. This looks really bad for Kansas City tonight. So I do like Dickey. I also do. I think there are 2 pitchers out there tonight that are worth rolling the dice on, and they're both at the very bottom of the Fanmouth charts, which means you're getting huge value. I used this strategy yesterday when I went with Anderson of Arizona, and the way I explained it was when you're only pitching, you were only paying $6,000 for a pitcher. Getting 6 points out of him gets you value. And he ended up getting like 11 points last night. He was one of the best values of anybody going last night. Tonight, there are 2 of these guys. You got Buchanan of Philadelphia tonight, pitching at home against a terrible Mets team. I think that's a very nice matchup. And the other one is Shoemaker pitching tonight against Seattle. Again, you've got Seattle's a decent hitting team, but not great. Shoemaker's actually pitched very well in his 3 starts going. And so, you want to really be bold, go with both of those guys, and then you'll have an all-star hitting lineup. I think if it's worth trying tonight on the Fanmouth lineups. Slot in those 2 lowest priced pitchers and look at the lineup you end up with. I think you might be able to talk yourself into it. If you're not that bold, then go with the safe play, which is Dickey, and then maybe just one of my surprise guys.
Anderson had 11 points last night.
10, I think 10 and a half.
Wow, that's weird.
He got a win. I told you guys,
yeah.
You and Jeff don't understand the power of the win. Now, if the goal in Fanmouth, which is my goal, is to score 100 points, right, and you find 2 pitchers that are going to win, that's 8 free points right there. I went head to head with Jeff last night. It came down to me having Anderson and him having C.J. Wilson. Now, C.J. Wilson's by far the better pitcher, but Anderson, to me, was the much surer win pitcher,
Yeah,
right?
see, I don't know about that. I went with John Lackey, and I got plenty of points out of
Well,
him.
Wilson, but Wilson did not get a win. Anderson got a win, and I ended up beating Jeff. Had it been the other way around, had Wilson won the game and Anderson not, he would have beaten me. So I like, I like pitchers. I like getting you don't get it's only 4 points, yes, but you don't get 4 free points at any other position. So that's a strategy I like to employ. And like I said, my thinking as well yesterday. My goal is to get 1 point for every $1,000 invested in your player. And when you go with a low price pitcher, like I said with Anderson yesterday, 6,000. I think he scored 10.5 points. That's $1.75 on your dollar.
Yeah, but it's a lot easier to do that on the lower price players than it is on the higher price players because your points have to come from somewhere. You can't just trot out a bunch of $6,000 guys.
Correct.
But all right.
Right. But it's not, I mean, still, the reason guys are low priced is because they're not expected to score a lot of points. So to say that it's easy to get double value out of these low price guys, I mean, certainly that, I wouldn't say that either. So.
All right, moving over to catcher. Today I'm rolling with Devin Mesoraco. I think he's the obvious choice. Hitting .338 with 6 homers in 65 at-bats against right-handers. Facing Cole Mentor today, .460 ERA at home, giving up a .306 average to lefties. I think Mesoraco is the obvious choice. I'm not sure there's much else I would consider at catcher. What are you thinking?
Well, it's going to come down to how much money you want to spend on your players. I don't see any other way but to go with 3 high-priced outfielders tonight. I like 3 high-priced infielders as well. I think catcher's a position where I'm going to have to save money. I love Mesoraco, and I may end up going with him. I do like him, but I may not have that kind of money to spend at catcher, even in my all-star lineup. I'm going to wait and see who the Angels are catching tonight. I mean, Mauer tonight for Seattle's the worst pitcher going. And I presume Conger's going to catch again tonight. He caught last night. He puts up decent numbers. I think the Angels are going to put up a lot of runs. So I'm looking to get points with little by spending as little as possible at this position. And so my choice is going to be Conger. If he plays, I'll gladly switch over to Ionetta if he's the guy that plays.
Yeah, I would think that it would be Ionetta with the lefty on the mound. Conger's usually in the game against the righty, but yeah, like you said, the platoon guys are always valuable because their prices stay a bit lower.
I'm pretty sure Mauer's going to pitch with his right hand tonight.
All right, moving over to first base. There's a lot of good stuff at first base. What are you thinking here?
Although Mauer might be just as good pitching left-handed, but I think he's going to try right-handed tonight. First base is a position where I think you can. I'm going to spend money for sure. I think there's 2 or 3 very, very good high-priced options that are going to be difficult to choose between. I originally, my first thought was to play Ryan Howard. Wheeler's got a .329 batting average against the left-handed hitters. He's on the road. He hasn't pitched well. He's, statistically, he's one of the worst pitchers going tonight. But then I looked a little down. God, how can you pass on Pujols tonight against Mauer? I thought that was a good matchup, but I looked even farther. My choice is going to be Chris Davis. Chris Davis is back in the lineup. He's hitting well. Peacock's pitching tonight for Houston. It's a good hitter's park. Peacock has a .274 batting average against left-handed hitters. Davis is Baltimore's best lefty. So not only is he going to be my first base choice, but I'm going to make him my home run derby choice tonight as well.
Okay, yeah, I went through the same thing as you did. I like Chris Davis a lot. I like Ryan Howard a lot. Facing Wheeler, .568 ERA on the road, giving up a .329 average to lefties. I like Pujols. Like I said, there's a lot of good options. Adrian Gonzalez, I think, is a good option here. I'm going to have a hard time filling that utility spot because there are several at first base and several additional outfielders that I like. But eventually I settled on Adam Lind. He's got just good career numbers against Shields, 5 home runs and 51 at-bats if you're after the home run. He's hitting 388 against righties this season. But like I said, I wouldn't fault you if you started Davis or Gonzalez or Ryan Howard. I think there's plenty of good plays today.
Well, in fact, a guy I forgot to mention conveniently was Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt, eats up left-handers. He's going against Cingrani tonight. I have a lot of respect for Cingrani, but he does give up power to right-handed hitters. And like I said, Goldschmidt against lefties is usually gold. So there's another guy to consider for your utility spot.
Yeah. And then second base, I went through a bit of the same where I think there's a couple good options. You could go Utley, again, picking on Wheeler. You've got Utley hitting 364 against righties. But as usual, I'm going to stick with D. Gordon, hitting 310 against righties. And of course, as always, I'm after stolen bases. Got Tony Sanchez behind the plate, throwing out 3 of 21 runners. And you got Garrett Cole on the mound. They've only caught 1 of 13 when he's pitching. So great opportunity for Gordon to get going here. I think he's a top play as well. What about you, second base?
I'm going to go with Utley. You mentioned Utley. I mentioned Ryan Howard at first base. As a guy to consider. I think Utley stands out among the second basemen. 10-17 OPS against right-handed pitchers. Has some power there. We talked about Wheeler. Now, Wheeler's kind of very mediocre overall, but 329 average against lefties. I think that's to me, that's a matchup where I'm going to want to spend money on this guy. He's costly, but I think he's worth it.
All right. Good stuff. What are you thinking at third base?
Well, it's a tougher position. I'm not sure that I have a real standout at third base. Machado is another Oriole that I think is worth considering at the position. A guy I went with last night who did not come through for me, but I would consider again. And this is probably going to be a position where I look to save money. Is Holt of the Red Sox? He batted leadoff last night. He is a lefty hitter against a lefty pitcher tonight. But he's actually had some early success against left-handers. And Minor of Atlanta, who I think Minor's a very good pitcher, got a 308 batting average against left-handed hitters for some reason. So it's a nice statistical matchup. He's a very low-price guy at a position where I'm looking to. I don't see a standout here at third base, so kind of like the catcher position. If I'm going to need to save money somewhere other than pitching. And so this is probably going to be a position where I look for a value like Holt.
Yeah, good stuff there. We've been talking about Holt the past few days. I like sticking with Sandoval here. He's still continuing to hit. He hasn't hit a home run in a few games, but he's 26 for his last 68. 5 homers in his last 10 games. Obviously, the last few he hasn't hit one. But he did very well hitting at home in San Francisco. I think he's going to love hitting in St. Louis. Garcia at home has a 5.14 ERA. So I think, and he's not, still on the inexpensive side. So I think I'm going to stick with Sandoval over at third base today.
Yeah, I can't. I've been on him as well. Maybe haven't been as high on him as you and Jeff have been. I don't like this matchup. He does not hit right-handed very well, and Garcia has a 229 batting average against right-handed hitters. I actually considered Garcia as my pitcher tonight, just based on that one stat.
Against right-handers or left-handers?
Right-handers. He's a lefty who gets righties out. And yet now he hasn't pitched that much this year. The Giants have these big right-handed hitters, Posey and Pence and Morse, and tonight Sandoval switching as a switch hitter. Here's a guy who seems to. I like Garcia as a pitcher overall, and he seems to be a guy who gets right-handers out. So I'm not going to play any Giants tonight.
All right. Even with our contest going on, huh? All right. What do you think over at shortstop?
I think there's some good choices at shortstop. I'm going to go with Rollins of the Phillies. Again, I've mentioned Philly left-handed hitters. Rollins is a switch hitter against Wheeler. I think it's a good matchup. I considered Ibar as well. I've talked about the Angels scoring runs against Mauer tonight. I think that's a good choice. Owings of Arizona is a guy who hits left-handers well. I know a guy you're usually high on. I considered if I was looking to save a little money, he'd probably be my choice among the mid-price guys. But this is a position where I think I've got money to spend. I like the matchup. Rollins hits right-handers fairly well. Wheeler doesn't get left-handers out very well. So I'm gonna, I may be putting too many eggs in my Phillies basket tonight, but because they haven't been a great hitting team this year. But I like the matchup.
Yeah, no, nothing wrong with that actually. With the Phillies, I had their top three guys as pretty much my second options at all three of their positions at first, second, and short. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Phillies today. But I would probably go with J.J. Hardy. I'm a bit higher on the Orioles today against Brad Peacock. Hardy's been hot. He's 11 for his last 28. He's hitting 330 in May, 320 against righties, and facing Brad Peacock, who's got a 587 in 7 starts at home this season. So there's a pretty decent sample size to show that he's just not a very good pitcher in Houston. And then moving over to the outfield, a lot of good stuff here. I think if you have the money, Mike Trout's a good choice. He's starting to heat up. He's got a hit in 9 straight games, 2 homers in his last 6 games. You mentioned Marr, gives up a 333 batting average to righties. So he's a good play. A couple guys I've been on a lot lately, and they're just absolutely on another level right now. First is Nelson Cruz, 7 homers in his last 5 games with 15 hits in that span. He's got 15 homers in 160 at-bats against right-handers. He's just got crazy power against righties this season. I made him my home run pick. I wish I had picked him yesterday, but going to have to do it today. And then Yasiel Puig, another home run last night. That's 8 for the month of May. He's on fire as well. Some good choices there. For cheaper options, Markakis, another guy who crushes right-handed pitching. I think he's a great play at home. And the other guy I'll give you is Billy Hamilton, whose price is way down. He has not been great, but he's facing Cole Mentor, who's given up a 306 average to lefties. And then the big play is you got Miguel Montero behind the plate. He's thrown out just 3 of 27 base stealers this year. So if Hamilton's on, he's going to have the green light to steal. I think he could, maybe post a couple of steals today as long as he's on base. What do you think in the outfield?
Oh, I like a lot of what you said there. It's going to be tough to pick between a lot of these guys. Certainly Trout, to me, is a standout play. He's an absolutely, positively must-start tonight. I've already identified Mauer, who I think is the worst pitcher going tonight. You could argue Trout's the best hitter in all of baseball. It's one of those dream-come-true kind of matchups. Have to spend money on him tonight. The others, I originally had Puig and Justin Upton as 2 guys, who I wanted in my lineup. Maybe I'm overthinking this Dodger game tonight, but you got Cole, former UCLA star, returning to Los Angeles to pitch for Pittsburgh tonight. He does, he's a decent pitcher, a former number 1 pick. I'm a little afraid to go with Dodgers tonight. I don't think that's it's an A minus matchup, and I'm looking for A pluses tonight. You mentioned Nelson Cruz. I think he's one of these A plus guys. You can even throw Adam Jones in there if you don't already have too many Orioles. And I agree with you. Hardy is also a guy to consider for the Orioles. So there's there's a excess of real good players there. I think Springer tonight of Houston, he's been hitting real well. Jimenez is pitching tonight for Baltimore. He's actually weaker against righties than he is against lefties. Jay Bruce, you mentioned Cole Mentor, doesn't get lefties out very well. Jay Bruce, a big, powerful left-handed hitter for the Reds. So there's just a lot of options here, but I would say this. I'd say that among all these great guys, I'd say Trout definitely has to be number 1 on your list, and probably Cruz number 2.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, Springer was the most glaring omission. Unfortunately, I only had 3 spaces. I would love to have him in my lineup as well. Cruz, Puig, and Springer, along with Encarnacion, have been the absolute hottest hitters in May. Just great performances out of them. And the thing about Puig, I know you're scared of the matchup, but for me, the way he's hitting right now, I mean, it's matchup proof. I mean, throw somebody out there, and he's likely to take them deep. So
I agree. I mean, I agree, and that's
I'm not
and
too worried.
Encarnacion and Encarnacion almost rates as that same category.
Yeah,
It's
because
like, man, if he's playing, you got to get him in your lineup.
yeah, I remember we talked about. I skipped him the other day because Alex Cobb was on the mound and hadn't given up a lot of home runs, and he still homered off him.
Right.
So it's like so a couple of these guys are just some of these guys are just in the zone right now. May's been very good to a few of these hitters. That wraps it up for the outfield. Time to give you our final word. I guess that just, gosh, the outfield is just complicating it for me. There's four guys that I really want, and they're all high-priced guys. So. I like Vogelsong. I like Heron. I may explore some cheaper options because I've just sort of become enamored with some guys offensively. So I may employ part of Dave's strategy and find a cheaper pitcher that I like a bit. I think Mesoraco is the top option. I think Hundley is a decent play as well at catcher, or otherwise it'll probably be a punt option there. Mesoraco may have to be sacrificed so that I can get more guys in the outfield. D. Gordon and Billy Hamilton. Put both of those guys in there, you're likely to get some steals, so I think that's a good play. And then I like the Orioles today. I think against Peacock, that's one of the top plays. I think your Angels are great plays as well. Kendrick and Green are in play as well on the infield. So, go after the really weak pitchers. It's not going to cost you a ton. I know your pitching won't cost you a ton today. I may end up, checking the lineups close to game time, finding a few infielders that are, platoon guys, and really spending money in the outfield. Because, like I said, Trout, Springer, Puig, and Cruz going to be really hard to figure out which one of them is not going in my lineup today. Dave, final word.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said there. I think this is one of those days where you may, like me, really like Dickey as your top pitcher of the day and spend the money, and then you start penciling in your outfielders, and you're running out of money, and you say, oh man, I haven't gotten to the high priced outfielders yet, or the second or the third or the fourth level of them, and then go back and reconsider and say, you know what, I like Dickey today, but today's the day for hitters. And it may end up being that way. I think there are so many good hitters. You mentioned that you focused on the outfield. I think there's great hitters in the infield too. There's three or four. We talked about these 3 or 4 first basemen. Unfortunately, the outfield you can play 3 of them. The infield you can only play 1 first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
And so paring that down to 1 or maybe 2 if you're going to go to utility there. You mentioned this, but a key is going to be I think, saving money at pitcher, and B, finding a position or two where you're least comfortable with the guys, the higher price guys, and save as much money there as possible. That's why I'm recommending Holt at third base. You almost get him for free. And it's not like, well, I'm passing on a great. If Sandoval, for example, was facing a right-handed pitcher who wasn't very good, then he's a no-brainer. I got to have him in there. But tonight, he's not as good against lefties, and they're on the road. So, you know what? I can fade him tonight, as Jeff would say, and go with a cheaper third baseman, because this is going to allow me to get one more heavyweight first baseman or outfielder in there. So that would be my recommendation. Try to save money at pitcher, try to save money at third base, maybe even at catcher, and then go crazy with the rest of them.
All right, good stuff there as usual from Dave. That wraps it up for today. Dave and I will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, you can check out our full rankings at blog.fanmouth.com. You can follow us on Twitter at PlayFanmouth. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.